Hey folks, I want to talk to you about this application Readio. I strongly recommend Readio to help grandparents and parents read to their grandchildren remotely when they can't be in the same room. Whether you're living across the country, across the world, or you're just gone on a business trip, Readio makes it easy for you to read to those young ones when you're away. It's a super easy tool that allows for video monitoring across the top of the screen so they can see you and you can see them, as well as having the book prominently displayed, making it easy for you to read to those young ones, or better yet, having them read to you. What I want you guys to do is go to cool-grandpa.us, look for the affiliate link for Readio, click on that link, and sign up today for your free trial. Welcome back in. I'm excited that you have chosen to join myself and Roland Thompson for a great discussion about grandfathers, about connections, about priorities. Roland has over 40 grandchildren and has a very unique and distinctive relationship with each and every one of them. Roland is going to sit down and share with us how he has built individual connections with each and every one of those grandchildren and what he sees are risks for some of the younger generation. You're going to be sure to enjoy this show. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Hello, and welcome to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. This is your host, Greg Payne, coming at you from Studio 12. This podcast is about being the best possible grandpa you can be, focusing on what it is to be a grandpa and how we can all share that experience together for our grandchildren. Hi, Roland. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to sit down with us on the Cool Grandpa Podcast. This is going to be an absolutely fun conversation with us.
Oh, hey, I really appreciate being here, and it's awesome to get to know a cool grandpa.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Now, one question I ask every grandpa that comes on is, tell us a little bit about your experience of when you first found out you were going to be a grandfather.
Wow, it's like 28 years ago. And it was... I guess what was going on during my life at that time, 28 years ago, I was really heavily involved in business and stuff. And they were 4 hours away. So it was really, really having that distance and getting to get over there and other grandparents. And because his first child is, I almost felt like I was lost in the shuffle a little bit, you know what I mean? But it was longer than a week ago, so it's hard for me to remember things longer than a week. But I know it was cool. It was just a different experience. But having, we have a yours, mine, and ours. My wife had 3 boys. I had 5 children. Then we had our 2 children, and so it's my daughter, the youngest, we adopted from Romania when she was 2 weeks old, is 30 this year, and so she's 2 years older than our oldest grandchild. So they were pretty close to age.
Oh, wow.
And so with her being a baby, still young, probably took up a lot of my time with her and my wife coming back from, Romania and settling in with that. And at the same time, we had so we had probably about 5 teenagers in high school at the same time, and playing football. And so I was pretty busy and with work and all that. And it was a pretty fulfilled day. It wasn't like I had a lot of time. It's like, wait a minute, I'm not old enough to be a grandpa. I'm only 42 years old.
Right. And, probably still thinking too, as far as, the work and career and projects and everything else that you had going on.
Oh yeah. And with the kids that I'm really involved with, the adults now that I'm involved with in businesses and stuff like this, they were just kids. They were just teenagers. They were at that time. And so dealing with teenagers, and my daughter was, newly married, living over in Seattle, 4 hours away. And so it was, and her life was, she mostly was raised after my divorce I tell people I was married going on 49 years now. It just took two women to get there. And my first wife was 10 years, and now I've been married almost 40 years with my current and final spouse. That still having a little bit of unsettlement with the former and all that kind of stuff, all the family stuff. So it pretty well got lost in a lot of shuffling, if that makes sense.
No, it does, because I was also going to ask you too, is it's a little bit of a unique situation where you're still having teenagers and younger while you're welcoming in grandchildren into the family. Right. And was curious about how you are able to balance those priorities, because I know just talking with you that you've really tried to make sure that you have a good relationship with each child and grandchild individually.
Well, and it was, and maybe a lot of that came later in life or whatever. It's the importance of, so right now when I'm with my project and what I'm doing and the, what do you call it? My meditating, and the thing that really hit me is the thing about connection and how important in connection is. Because now my focus is more on a big level, is the thing with every day in this country, on the average, 3,703 teenagers attempt suicide. And that 10 to 15% of all children contemplate suicide. And to me, that road where hopelessness intersects with isolation is what creates that contemplation of suicide. And when I realized that today I have 46 grandchildren, my 47th is due. It'll be my last grandchild, because now I'm getting into the great grandchildren stage. But my daughter will be that she's the youngest, and she's due in a month for her first daughter. But I think all my other kids are old people now, and so therefore they will be dealing with grandkids, and for me I group them all together. But that means 6 of my grandchildren are contemplating suicide. And the thought that if anything ever happened to them. Now, the suicide among youth became real to me when 2 of my good close friends, families, both of them lost their teenagers to suicide. And when you know people that go through that, then you think, what if that happened to one of my grandkids and I could have done something about it? And then it just really kind of just helps. It just makes my mission of what I'm doing. My foundation I created about 4 years ago was the Heart of the Fathers Foundation, was connecting the sunset generation, the older generation, me, with the rising generation. When I realized that the future leaders of the world are these young people, and it's their mindset. And now I'm coming back and I'm finding out it's connection. And I'm thinking, you know what? Somebody said, you might be the America's connection grandpa. That's my focus.
Right. Well, and I think that's really, shocking in a way, because I hadn't looked at statistics on youth suicide in a long time. I mean, part of it is, your kids are grown. You don't look at those statistics very often, but at the same time, I think that's a great reminder for grandfathers and then men in general that, a lot of the youth are struggling with connections and needing, that mentorship and needing somebody just to, say those few kind words. I mean, everybody does, but at the same time, I think it's especially meaningful when we hear those stories about a coach or a scoutmaster or a grandfather or father that helps a friend even, of a kid.
Well, and that's the thing about the project I'm working on, because right now it's in the creation of content. And one of the things I think this story came back to me that I thought a couple days ago, and it really impacted me. And if it's okay, I can share that story.
Sure.
So one day, as they stood on the riverbank, the townspeople noticed several people frantically screaming for help as they were being carried downstream by the river's raging currents. Moved by their plight, the caring town people immediately rescued the victims from the furious waters. However, as time went on, they discovered more and more people being carried downstream by the river. And research revealed what everyone had suspected. The bridge further up the river had been badly damaged and only half the people were making it across. Now, as time went on, matters got worse. An ever-increasing number of people were needed to be rescued. The town committed more and more of their annual budget to the problem. They hired permanent rescue workers. They built a riverside hospital. They created rehabilitation programs. They invented ever more sophisticated rescue devices, and they trained more volunteers. One day, after several years of pulling people out of the river, one man began to ask, wouldn't it be better if we repaired the bridge? Now, many of the rescue workers were too busy to pay any attention to this idea, and others had never seen the bridge and were afraid to venture away from the familiar. Still, others said that they hadn't the slightest idea how to repair a bridge, and so the bodies kept coming. And when I was inquiring about the suicide thing, because it hit so home hard, 40 years ago, my father, who was 49 years old, took his own life. And today's would have been his 89th birthday. And 6 months before that, my son, my oldest son, who was getting ready to turn, he was 7 years old, drowned. And then 6 months after my dad died, my grandmother passed away from cancer. And it happened like, it's like, oh my gosh, I was going from 20 and all these other events, 29 years old, greatest job, everything's going really good, new home, five children, fifth child just born, to where exactly 2 years later, I'm 31, I'm homeless, jobless, my family, my wife and I divorced, she moved the other side of the mountain, and now I have nothing. And it's like, but I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't gone through that. It's kind of the old Chinese farmer story.
Right.
Well, when I started inquiring about the suicide thing, people said, oh my gosh, you know what? You need to go talk to Mark Wilson or somebody like this. And he's into that part. When I started talking to people, they would say, well, here's the signs that you need to look for teenagers and children who are going through depression and suicide. Or I'm a mental health counselor and I help people. These were the hospitals, the rehab centers, and these kids, nobody was fixing the bridge. And then it's like, oh my gosh, it's just hit me. Wait a minute. How can we get them before they fall down into the stream and float down this river? How do we fix that bridge? And I found out it's connection. When you realize that isolation is connection. And when you take people my age, the first 50 years of my life was without technology. And now I'm dealing with kids who are born with cell phones in their hands and it becomes a part of them. There's no way to relate.
Right.
And so one of the stories that I'll share with you after, see, to me, somebody told me years ago that coincidences is God's way of remaining anonymous. Well, one of those coincidences was 4 years ago when I started looking at this, the suicide depression. One of our 15-year-old grandsons was his family situation was really bad. His parents were dealing with drug addiction and all this, and he had to be taken out of the home. Well, there's only one place for him to go, right? Grandma and grandpa. And when you sit there and you think, okay, he's 15, he's struggling, he's reclused into his room, he's on the computer. I put on my old dad hat and went to work. I started grounding him off his phone, grounding him off the computer. You need to work on your homework. Your homework's not getting done. Your counselor's saying this. And eventually what happened was he drops out of school in his junior year. He reclused back to his room. He was going more and more deeper in depression. I was like driving him more into depression. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, wait a minute, I'm finding this out. What we need to do is learn more about these kids. Quit forcing them what you know on them. You need to learn who they are. You need to go in and really know who they are. When you know who they are, then they'll know who you are. So I backed off. I put all that stuff behind me and I focused on strictly learning who he is. What was he doing on the computer? Not trying to, micromanage him or anything. Find out, you know what I learned? I had no idea. I learned that gaming is $1 billion industry. And I went, wait a minute, gaming? You mean not Pong? Not Pac-Man? Those are the gaming I know.
Right.
And he was like, no, it's $1 billion industry. There are teams. They have big, huge facilities where people game and there's sponsors. And I had no idea. I learned. And pretty soon I started learning more and more from him. And he said, well, what do you want to do in life? I think I want to be a gamer. I think I want to have my own professional team. And you know what I said? Well, you know what? Let's do it. I wasn't going to, no. But eventually he said, okay. And he started looking at it. And the next thing I know, he went and got his GED on his own. After he went on his own and got his GED.
Oh, wow.
He started doing a job, found out that he was learning world events. He'd come out and share world events with me. Some stuff was kind of boring, but I acted interested. And I turned around, and the next thing I know, he comes out of his room and he says, we started talking more, started really getting a lot of trust. We really started bonding, and it was exciting. And the next thing I know, he said, what would you think if I joined the Army? Now I'm thinking, I did three tours Vietnam, I'm Navy, and I'm looking there, I said, and in my mind, I'm thinking, yes, discipline. So I said, sure. So he worked through the program, recruiters, and all this stuff, and he was just getting ready to sign the paper to commit to joining the Army. And he looked up at me and my wife, his grandma. He said, what would you think if I went on a service mission for church? And I'm thinking, yeah, right. In my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, right.
Yeah.
You haven't been to church, you haven't done, but I didn't. I said, okay. So his grandma helped him and we helped him and everything. And then he ended up, and he doesn't know where he's going to go. And they send him these papers. And then he gets called to go to the Philippines for 2 years in the third world part of Philippines.
Right.
And he did the best. He learned the language and all that. When he came home, they said he learned it. It was so good. Now he joined the Army and now he's in Army intelligence. And I mean, it was like now my relationship with him, he's my mentor. He sends me information and I'm learning a lot from him just about what that age group is doing. Yeah. And I had 3 other grandkids that I went through that same type of thing with when I learned who they were.
Well, I was going to ask you did that start to set a pattern and some aha moments with you about how you could strengthen the relationships with the other grandchildren?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, big time. I mean, for instance, again, another one is one of the older, I got the older grandkids that are getting ready to get out of the house, and I wanted to get them before I lose them. You know what I mean? Right. And I look for every single opportunity between the parents. Now, these kids are 4 hours away, and I look for opportunities to spend one-on-one with them. I need one-on-one. And so I have one grandson he's like 6'5". He was all conference, offense, defense, football, and he's being recruited by colleges. And there's a college in Montana, Montana State, I think it is, who was recruiting him, and they needed him to go to the campus. And his mom calls up, Dad, nobody's to go with him to go up there. I said, I'll go, And I flew him over here to my house. And what I did, I said, hey, you know what, Tone? It's a 15-hour drive to get up there, and it's snowy out. Why don't we take a train? I've never done a train. He goes, that would be cool, Grandpa. So we planned it. We took a train up to Havre, Montana. We get up there, and I would just follow them along, and 3 other kids from around the country are being recruited. And I was following them around and going to the coach's stuff. The last day, we had our own motel room. The last day was a big banquet, and where they, formal banquet and everything. And I looked at him and said, you know what? I've been hanging with you these last 3 or 4 days. Why don't you go to the banquet by yourself? He said, okay, just so that you can go and be yourself. That would be cool. And so I let him go. He comes back to the motel room at 9 o'clock at night. This is where an aha moment hit me. He goes, we're sitting there talking about what's banquet and philosophy and all this. He was on his phone the whole time, looking at his phone while I was talking with him. And he was taking pictures of himself and stuff like this. And I'm thinking in my mind, just like all the other grandparents, he's not listening to a word I'm saying. He's too busy on his phone, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So you know what? I said, wow, I said, hey, what you doing? And he goes, oh, I'm Snapchatting. I go, Snapchatting? What's that? He goes, oh, I've got friends, 300 friends on Snapchat. A few of us have a string where we Snapchat every day. We've been doing it for like 330 days now. I go, well, that's really cool. He said, in fact, what you were telling me, I was sharing with them. And I go, really? He said, and one of them came back and said, wow, your grandpa sounds like he's really cool. And here all the time I was thinking he wasn't listening to me.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you tell your friend that I think he's an awesome guy, that that he spends time and that he and that you guys are friends. And he Snapchat him, and then he showed me the Snapchat of his friend laying in bed with it and said, I really needed to hear that.
Wow.
And I thought, oh my gosh. That is such a simple thing. It's hard, is to take all our beliefs, our opinions, and our judgments and just put it behind you. Those things, beliefs, our judgments, and our opinions are great, big, huge walls that block truth. And what we need to do is put those down and then just listen and find the truth and really know who they are, no matter what their age.
Yeah.
And that is connection. And with him, we stay connected. Now he's in Oregon, going to college on a scholarship, and stays in touch, and he calls me up and we talk. And then I have another one. I mean, I've got these stories from my grandchildren that I know I talked to them. They were on the edge. They were on the edge. And when I started learning who they were and what their dreams and their passion, then I thought, oh my gosh, that's exactly what my mission statement is. We are members of the Sunset Generation, us old fogies who are passionately invested in making the world better by empowering the rising generation to live the reason they are here.
Wow.
And so that's where my whole life now is totally devoted to this.
Well, and I've got a question for you too, because we're in a weird time with the advancement of technologies and things, in that, certainly you grew up in the time of, let's say, analog. And I've got a friend of mine that says, kind of Gen X is really about the last analog generation, right? Where the idea of, being on the phone or doing your homework in front of TV or with the stereo on or something, we'd typically get in trouble for that. But the way that the kids now, I think, have so much stimuli coming at them, I wonder too if, sometimes it's a matter of not being disrespectful by being on a device or something while still maintaining a conversation with a grandparent or a parent. But it's that the kids are kind of used to, I've got, thing 1, thing 2, and thing 3 all going on at the same time. They've somehow, as little kids, figured out how to manage through that, where to us it looks rude and checked out, and some of those
negatives. Because our brains were never functioning. Their brains have developed. See, they're the future leaders of the world. And when I sit there and I think about this, I was thinking about this. I was doing some writing a few weeks ago. I'm working on a couple of books, a couple more. I've already got 2 out. I got a bestseller and stuff, and I'm working on a couple of books. And the one that came to me was this idea that, that tomorrow, Greg, you and I and everyone else, we're going to wake up in the morning in a place that no human being has ever stepped foot in, ever. And it's called tomorrow. No human being has ever been. We have no idea what is going to come forth. We had the pandemic, we had 9/11, we had all this stuff. We have no idea. Some people wake up and their houses are gone, and we have no idea. Now, the thing about it is, I've been on this earth 70 years. Now, I have no idea. Am I fearful? Somewhat, but about what we're faced with. But I have enough faith that my fear used to be for these younger people. But the more I learn who they are, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, the world is really in good hands when you learn who they are. And you know what is really cool is to be able to go and walk into a house of your grandkids. And now when you sit down with them and you talk to them and you ask them a question, that they've put down their device, 3 years old, 5 years old, they see you coming, they put it down and they come over and hug you. Now, that never happened, but when you learn who they are, they respect that. Because here's the other thing. My house is built for grandkids now. We have 2 homes. We have the big home, and we got this, my wife and I. And they come over, they'll crawl on, they'll pull the lamps down, pull the blind, they destroy things. I will never, ever, ever discipline any of my grandchildren, ever. I will never chastise them. I will never, but I see people do it all the time to their grandkids and, in church or whatever, and you see them there and they'll discipline them somehow or say, oh, don't do that, sit down, and they'll take them, they'll sit them down. And, one of the people that, Carrie Burns.
Yes.
She was telling me, we were talking about this and she was telling me the same thing. We're about the discipline thing and talking about how maybe one of her parents or whatever disciplined a kid. And it's like, and it's like, hey, I've got it handled, and told him he had it handled, but maybe would have come across as, as a chastise to the parent, which it didn't. I mean, it wasn't. Right. But you sit there and you think, let the parents discipline. Those kids have 4 entities in front of them all the time, and we need to connect them. The 1 is the parents. 2 is the grandparents. 3 is the peers, their peers, and 4 are teachers. And when you sit there and you think of those influences and you watch a classroom and you watch how these kids are, our school system is also the bridge. It is so, we need to fix that bridge because these kids, believe me, I really truly believe that we don't need to teach them reading, writing, arithmetic anymore. I really believe that one of the things we do is focusing on what if we had classrooms where no matter what age they are, 6 years old, 7 years old, first, second, third grade, that what they do is they get in groups of 5 or 6. And what they do is learn about the other kids, and when you sit there and they learn who these other kids are, it's kind of like one of the analogies I use. Go ahead.
No, I was kind of going to say, that to me that used to be a little bit of the playground, and when we had recess, which was more than like for 5 minutes, and a lot of schools have cut that out. But
even the recesses, you have these kids, you have bullying. You have these isolation where kids are sitting in the corner. Nobody's encouraging them to play recess. But if they're in a structured environment where they're sitting around and structurally getting to know these other kids, you see, teaching them how to connect, and because if you realize that if everything, you think 8.3 billion people on this planet, right?
Yep.
There's not one person on this planet anywhere that has any more right to walk on this planet than anyone else. That no one is better than you, no one is better than me, no one's better than them. And if you and this is the other one, it's quit labeling. That's another one, quit labeling. What do you mean labeling? Well, if somebody comes up and says, I'm Canadian. No, Plato said, I'm a citizen of the planet Earth, and I just happen to live in Canada. Or, you're Mexican. No, I'm a citizen of planet Earth, and I just happen to reside in Mexico. Or I'm a citizen of the planet Earth, and my skin just happens to be black. Or any of those labeling. and realize that every single human being is a puzzle piece that has a different configuration, a different size, and a different color. And our goal is looking at this huge big picture that we're pieces of the puzzle, is that every single human being needs to find the one that they configures that kind of connects. And if you are in a room or in a house and you never get out, how are they going to find out who they are? Their puzzle piece.
Right.
Remember that one, you've probably seen it, where somebody posted, they go to a school and they got the whole hall is full of balloons, hundreds and hundreds of balloons. And they got all the kids' names on them. And they tell you to go find your balloon, and which is almost an impossible task with all these kids. But what they found out that, wait, why don't you just pick up any balloon, look whose it is, and go find that person? And in just a matter of minutes, somebody's tapping you on your shoulder, hey, here's your balloon, and pretty soon everybody's got their balloons.
Yeah.
It's all connection. We teach them how to connect, because that is what drives the suicide thing, is lack of connection. And, sure, we got broken homes and all this, but if you had all four entities, parents, grandparents, teachers, and peers, are aware of that, where any of these links are broken, just one person making that one positive comment, one connection, one smile, accepting you no matter what, it'd be very powerful. And grandparents are sitting back, in their rooms being lonely. You know what I hear? They say, oh yeah, no, forget about my grandkids. They don't ever come over anymore. They never send me thank you cards. They never call me. I go over there, they're on their devices. I can't connect with them. Well, yeah, wait a minute. You've been here 70 years. You have experience on connecting. You're supposed to. They just got here. You teach them how to connect.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's, where I've talked with Richard Iyer, and he's very much into being that intentional grandfather, and just like what you're talking about, right? It's not sitting back and being non-existent, kind of the, hey, I raised my kids, I'm done with it. Happy they have kids now, but leave me alone. And then he goes in and talks about the other ones where they're somewhat engaged, but the ones that have the biggest impact are the ones that are intentional. Just like you're saying, right? It's the, hey, I'm taking my son or grandson on a train trip to Montana for a recruiting visit. I'm calling this grandchild. I'm doing this, and
texting them all the time, saying, I'm just thinking of you. How are you doing? I love you. If you ever want to chat, just give me a call.
Well, and that's what our friend Carrie had talked about too, with being a long distance grandparent, is finding out the technology that the grandkids are on and using that to our advantage to establish those connections, so that, they're sending you funny little memes, or they're sending you jokes, and you're sending jokes back to them. And, we use the tools at hand instead of lamenting about the way things used to be, I think, is the biggest thing.
And that's what I said. If any of your listeners out there haven't heard of Carrie Long Distance Grandparenting, I think it's .com or whatever. She's up in Canada, and she's like totally cool. And she's not a grandparent, but hers focus is on her parents' connection with her grandkids. And her parents live in England, and they're she has some really, and you can join, in and just interact. And she's a great resource for people to get involved with.
And we'll put the link to that group, because both you and I are members of that group, and we'll put a link to Carrie's group in the show notes for this conversation. Okay.
Yeah, no, and it's kind of I like the idea of intentional. One of the things I went down and did, and you probably said, I went down and I can show you. So this is Julia. This is Liam.
So so he's got two different color socks on with
pink and blue,
two different grandchildren.
So I've got about 20 pairs. I don't have them for all of them. And I used to wear blue Liam, and then I would wear purple Luca. Well, then I started doing purple Luca and purple Damon. And then I said, heck with it. Why would I try to match them up? I just throw them in my drawer, grab two different colors, and put them on. because it's a conversation starter. It's with intent. They're on the forefront. Our children, if you have grandchildren, they really need to be your main priority in this life. They really do, because, that's one of the biggest legacy is their mindset, the positive mental attitude, whatever you want to call it. And when you learn who they are, you really learn who they are, then they'll know who you are. And children mimic. And, one of the things is looking back and my interaction with my grandparents, and back in the days a lot where children should be seen and not heard. You remember those days,
Yep.
And I don't know if that still goes on or whatever, but, I was thinking of connection ideas. Back in the days when I was 50s and 60s, we used to, warden cleaver and the family, and fathers knows best. And one of the things they used to do is sit around the table and have dinner. Now, you have a family, right?
Yes.
Do you guys have nightly dinners, sitting around with you and your family around dinner and talk with your kids?
Every so often, but it became very difficult when the kids hit their teenage years because, like everybody else, you got different practices and after-school activities, and now what that's hard for you to do that. Imagine bringing a grandparent over and being part of that. So here's an idea that I came up with yesterday. I thought, so if I'm your dad, I'm probably old enough to be your dad. So I'm your dad, and I sit there and I call you up and said, "Hey, Greg, hey, bud, can you do me a favor? I really need a favor. And actually, in my mind, it's life and death." He said, "Well, what is it, Dad?" "Well, next Sunday evening, can I come over to your house and cook dinner for you and your family?" "Well, but Dad, you don't have to do that." No, I have to do that. I have to come over and cook for your family. Can you just bring me there and we all sit around and let me cook dinner for you guys? You can think about it, grandma doing that or whatever. Well, would you say no? No.
No. It's like, "Hey, Grandpa's coming over. He wants to cook dinner for us all. You all better be here. No excuses." So Grandpa comes over, and you and your 3 kids and your wife, and you're sitting there, and Grandpa cooks a dinner, and and me, I used to be a cook, so it's kind of a long time ago. But you know what else I bring? I bring 6 books, diaries, and I pass them out to everybody. And I sit down there and I say, "Hey, listen, one of the things that I really regret doing, because I can't think back when I was in the 3rd or 4th grade of any of those days throughout the day. I can't think of what went on in that day. They're all gone. And I would love to know what I was thinking when I was 9 or 8 years old. And so that you don't have this regret, why don't we just sit down and write down what you did last week? What was the worst thing that happened to you during that week? What was your best friend?" Just write down some ideas. What are you most grateful for? And then collect the books or whatever, and try to do that every so often. And you think about setting up some kind of tradition. How hard is that? I mean, can you go back to your 3rd grade and know exactly what you did each day?
Not exactly. Yeah, absolutely not. I can remember, I think like all of us, right? We can remember some generalities and the memories that might be 2nd grade or it might be 4th grade.
Right.
But
our crushes on our teachers and things like that. Sure. I remember my first speaking gig. I did a little bit of stand-up. I did a little bit of comedy. I did acting and stuff. But one of my first speaking gigs was when I was 9 years old in the 4th grade. And we had to stand up in front of class. And I was shy as shy can be. I hated standing up in front of class. I was really reclusive, and it was to tell a joke. And I remember the joke verbatim. And the joke was, it was clean, so it's... The joke was, "Why are fire engines red?" Fire engines are red. Here's little 9-year-old Roland standing up in front of class. "Fire engines are red because 2 + 2 is 4. 4 times 3 is 12. There's 12 inches in a ruler. Queen Elizabeth was a ruler. Well, Queen Elizabeth was also a boat. And the boats sail in the sea. The sea have fishes. The fishes have fins. The Finns fought the Russians, and the Russians are red. And that's why fire engines are red, because they're Russian all over."
That's a long joke for 4th grade.
Hey, it was my first speaking gig,
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was. I remember telling it. I can picture myself telling it. That's it. Any other time before that, I probably don't remember. But it was overcoming that fear of being on stage or in front of kids and saying something for the first time.
Sure, sure. Now,
So
I've got a question for you. With some of the success that you've had, the businesses you're involved in music industry, recording, producing, things like that. How have you been able to use all of that to expose the grandchildren to some of that life that you have, and using it as a teaching tool, even with how business gets done,
well, one of them, the 16-year-old granddaughter, she's she lived over on the other side of the mountain when she was 16. She's going to be 19 here pretty soon. So she was going through depression. She lost her mom to drugs when she was 3.
Mm.
And she was written in, she was her dad and a stepmom and was really being smothered. And she was really good at athletes and everything, but they wouldn't let her stepmom wouldn't let her go to proms and things like that because she had to stay home and watch the little kids. And she was really, and no one really knew this. So knowing this was during the time that I was really focusing in the last 4 years on this. I went over there, made a special trip. I was over there visiting. It's just her and I said, hey, so what do you want to do in life? What do you want to do? She goes, well, I want to write music and I want to play music. I said, really? Have you done any playing? She goes, oh yeah, I've written 3 songs and I play them. Well, does anyone know? She goes, no. I said, well, here, play it for me. So she sat down, played the piano, and I videotaped one of them. I go, oh my gosh. You know what? Her voice reminds me of one of my favorite artists, Dido. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, wow, you're really good. We need to hook you up with your uncle, because we have a studio. Well, so we talked about it. She goes, oh, and I send it. Well, what happened after that was I was instructed that I needed to do a manifesto for my foundation. So my son and I took off for 3 days retreated for 3 days by ourselves to write a song for the foundation. And that whole experience was new to me because I haven't written songs. Him and I played only one time, and we have put a video out, him and I did, where I said, hey, we got these toys. We've never done anything together. So we recorded a video, and he's won many awards, John Lennon Songwriting Contest, World Songwriting Contest. And, we toured together. I toured with him when they're on the band. But I sit down there and I said, hey, you know what? I was thinking of him singing this song. I said, you know what? Why don't we bring Angie over and let her sing it? I love her voice, just as long as she doesn't take away from the song. So we flew her over. She recorded with us in 2 days. It was rushed because I flew her back. And we recorded a music video. And the song is Never Too Late. If you ever look it up, the video, it's really good. It's never too late. And it put Heart of the Fathers after it. And it put Heart of the Fathers, and then it may pop up and they'll show me and her. And we shot it in the studio and in my home. Well, what had happened was I entered it into a film festival for music video, and it was down in Utah, and I said, and they were playing it, and so we were asked to go down there. So her and I got her over here where I was. We flew first class, just her and I together. We flew first class down. She's 16, 17 to Utah. She skipped school. We went to the film festival. Here we are sitting in this big theater with all these people. And they show our music video up on the screen with her. And they called us up on stage and they said, wow, what's the mission? We told a little bit of mission behind this. But the concept, Greg, is this. Don't give them fish. Don't teach them to fish. Fish with them. That's the only way you can connect with them. We're trying to give them fish. We give them money. We leave them, or we try to teach them the fish, but they can learn anything they want on a computer. Is to come in and fish with them and let them lead. And so we did that, and which was kind of cool. Well, then she was going through school, and then when she moved out of her house last October, one of the things I'm trying to stay in touch. It's not the music. What do you want? Well, I think I want to be a screenwriter. I want to do film. Well, hey, I'm taking a load back over to Nashville. We've done music videos, and I got a GH5 and an iPad. Why don't we? And I got all these connections, teaching her connections throughout the country. And I said, let me hook up with the connection and we'll go to Nashville. We spent 15 days on the road, just her and I, 2 months ago. And we traveled to Nashville, around the country, interviewed like 21 interviews with people, 2 camera angles, her sitting down there. And I said, what do you want to do? She asked them about success. So we're going to call it Angie. We're going to do a documentary, but now maybe do a YouTube, call it Angie's Journey. Our last person we interviewed was the father of the lead singer for Imagine Dragons in his home. And so we sit down there, and so because we've had connection with, and he asking what success was. When we were in that interview and we got done, we went, met his wife, and we were talking. She started talking to my granddaughter, because they got a lot of grandkids. We have a lot of similarities, and started talking to her. Here's what was the most powerful thing that I've ever seen, that I'd learned from this. She asked her an opinion about a 16-year-old girl that she's in the community that she was working with, the mother was working with in the community, and she had to deal with drugs. She asked her opinion on how to deal with this. Well, my granddaughter was going through, similar type of things, and she sat down there and told her some really great ideas, and it's like, oh my gosh. And we left, and we get in the truck and we're hauling off. She goes, wow, Grandpa, I've never had anyone ever ask me for my opinion before. I said, my gosh, it was great. I'm going to remember that. And it's like, it really made me realize how much these kids really know. And you will be blown away when you see an 18-month-old sitting there navigating a cell phone. Tell me, that's what they do. And you can't get a 90-year-old woman to do that. Oh no, get that thing away from me. So, and you look at, it is amazing when you get to really know who they are. The other thing is to keep a list of each child. I'm thinking of creating something for them. Keep a list of each child, write down their dreams, write down their birthdays, write down the best way to connect, and keep a running tally of your communication with them, and just keep that at hand. Every time you talk to them, bring up something they brought up. Get them talking. Oh, really? Tell me more, I
think that's important, like you said, because right now I can remember pretty well, I've got 2 grandkids, but when they start coming, they probably start blurring together. So if you're not keeping a little journal, if you're not writing these things down, you start to cross wires a little bit. And, grandkids will probably let you slide on that, but man, how impactful would it be when your memory, even when you look up before you go visit and you review your notes a little bit, that you're dead on with, what their interests are, who their last boyfriend, girlfriend was.
Wow, somebody is actually listening to me.
Favorite band.
Somebody really gets me. Wow, that's connection. Hey, Grandpa, and they keep you. That's what connection is. That is what connection is. That's what keeps them off the road of isolation. And here's the other thing, when they tell you their dreams and what they want to do, you can't, these children have 2 paths, only 2 paths. They've got their own path that they're predestined to be on in life, their own path, and they got the ones that other people choose for them. And the problem is, most of us are pushing them down a path. No, you don't want to be a drummer in a band. You need to be a civil engineer. We're going to send you to school for that. Well, no, I think that, for instance, I really think the education system, find out what their dreams are and just focus on that. I learned that with my son. He was, he's 36 now, 37. But I remember when he was a kid, I started doing this when he was like 8. He's the youngest, because all the other kids are older. It's like 20 years between the youngest and the oldest. And when he found out what he wanted to do, he was about 8 years old. I said, you want to do songing. Well, no one ever asked me what I wanted to do when I was growing up. Never. I ended up, like I said, going in the Navy. I had no idea Vietnam was going on because I don't watch news. Well, I'll join the Navy because somebody I was cooking with at a fast food place, and it was my dad, my 2 brothers, and I just graduated, and she took interest in me, and an older lady, and she goes, so what are you going to do with your life? You're just going to stay home with your dad for the rest? I said, I have no idea. Well, my husband joined the Navy. Maybe you should join the Navy. I looked at her and I said, Okay. And the next day I joined the Navy. Boom, 3 tours Vietnam. But I wouldn't be where I'm today. And my son, when I asked him, he ended up going to engineering school in LA, 2 years, very expensive school, finding out what they're doing. What the Friday comes around, last day of school, the next week is finals, right? He comes home. I go, what are you doing? He said, what? Don't you have to do finals? Oh no, that's just to get the certificate to show that I graduated. I go, my mom was like, what? He goes, hey, I learned everything I needed to learn down there. Why do I need a certificate? I'm not ever going to work for anybody, and there's people get certificates and they're crappy engineers. I would be known by my work. I go, that's a pretty good philosophy. And that's where it all started, listening to them. And now he's a very, very great songwriter. And, he hasn't hit it big, which is really good because he's hangs with me all the time. We travel together on tour, and the mindset, and watching his mindset, the positive mental attitude, realizing that you have to, what do we learn in algebra? A negative times a negative is what?
Positive.
Yeah. So it's a failure times a failure.
Should be positive.
It's success.
Yeah.
Success is just a string of failures. These children are afraid to go out and do what they really want to do. Why? Well, because I might fail. But you got to fail. You will always fail at what you do. When my granddaughter wanted to go do the movie thing, she said, I want to be a movie. I said, well, let's go make a movie. Oh my gosh, Grandpa, that sounds exciting. But I'm scared. Why? What if it's really, really bad? And oh my gosh, you know what? Brene Brown. She goes, it's going to be your crappy first draft. You just got to get that one out of the way. You're going to go out and fail miserably with this, but you have to do that in order to be successful. Oh, okay. So we just do the thing is, just do the best with what you got and what you can. That's okay. Kind of like the new album out. That's one of the kind of cool things with Imagine Dragons, their new album. I think all the listeners should listen to it. When Dan writes these songs now, Mercury album, I listen to it. They are very powerful. My life, it's okay to not be okay. Hey, I don't want to hang out with toxic people, and then he did the song Wreck. And you listen to the mind of it. It's the mind of these younger people and what they're going through, and they're screaming for help. It's my life. And it's very inspirational. Music is the greatest conductor of the spirit. And when I'm working out in the morning and I'm listening to that album, my greatest thoughts come from listening to that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to remember that because of the lyrics. He has transformed from where he was in 2014. When did we do that? 2014, 2000. Yeah, when Radioactive came out, to now it's like he has got it, together, and it's exciting. And so, I mean, I if you're into that, some people listen to country music. To me, that lowers your IQ every time you listen to it. But just kidding. I'm into pop, rock, and stuff. And if you listen, and I'm,
sure.
So it's kind of like the medley my son and I did. It's Old Man by Neil Young and Cats in the Cradle, and they have the same tempo. So we created a medley of Old Man crossover with Old Man and Cats in the Cradle. Very good songs with messages. So and then we did a music video on that. You can find that on YouTube.
Yeah, I was going to say I was going to put a link to that in the show notes as well, and I'll be sure to put a link to Imagine Dragons.
Yeah. I mean, it's good. It's good information. But to answer your question, I get excited that the kids mimic you. They don't do as you say. They do as you do. That's all of them. That's how they learn when they first come to Earth. They mimic their parents. If you're sitting there fighting all the time, that's what they mimic, and this is what one of the things that Brene talks about Brown is live your life, be the person that you want your children to be. And that is very powerful. And it's not just parents, it's grandparents, it's peers, it's teachers. Yeah. How powerful teachers are in people's lives, and just about everyone can almost pick up that one teacher that guided them on a path to where they're at, and it influenced them. And it wasn't about what they taught in the classroom. That teacher took a special interest in learning who that child was, and spoke to that. And grandparents need to learn that. That's the power of connection. Anyway,
Yeah.
I talked too much.
No, it's been all great stuff, but I know we've had you on for a while, and as we're wrapping this thing up, what are some great ways that people can get in contact with you and follow the progress with the foundation?
Well, I'm just starting out, but one of the best ways is I've just created a Facebook group called Heart of the Fathers. I think it's Heart of the Fathers Foundation. Let me just see what the title is. And you can join that. I plan on start doing, it's Heart of the Fathers Foundation. I don't know if I've invited you to that.
I think I may be on there.
Yeah, but I plan on doing I plan on doing, maybe they want me to start doing YouTube videos, and I'm like, you know what, I could do that. And then maybe one of the other things is, oh, you're already a member. So one of the other things is I may start doing YouTube videos, but maybe doing Zoom meetings. Just say, hey, you know what, I'm going to come on a Zoom. If you're a grandparent, please join us. And we'll get in a great discussion about how to connect. Because some of you out there, sure, what we say is great, but your situation may be totally unique and totally different. And so maybe I'll probably start doing Zoom meetings, and you'll probably come on and start doing Zoom meetings and then getting more and more people that way. And right now that's where it's at. It's Heart of the Fathers Foundation. I'm a Facebooker. Now they're talking about it. Hey, come on, I just learned how to navigate MySpace. I just navigated MySpace. I finally got a friend. His name was Tom. And it's like, oh, wait a minute, that's everybody's friend. But now it's Facebook, and now they're talking about Facebook being whatever. Well, but I like it.
Yeah, I know that's where they say all the old people are hanging out now. And that's fine.
One of the things I also learned was from a psychiatrist, and I was studying loneliness from a psychiatrist on dealing with loneliness. And even though we have today's modern technology with Zooms and Zoom families, and they think that's really good connection, the personal connection, being within the energy, being within the spirit, that one-on-one, the hug, the physical contact, nothing replaces that. Nothing replaces that. And every opportunity that you have to have a personal hug, tell them that you love them, nurture them, no matter their age, size, or whatever, just tell them, and just always speak to them in their language and learn about them. We learned a lot these last 70 years. We've done learning with our life. Let's learn about their life. It opens up a whole new world for these last few years of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Roland, anything that we haven't touched on or anything that I haven't asked you or prompted you about?
No, is there?
Is
there anything you haven't asked me about yet? Yeah. I'm pretty well, this 5 minutes went by really fast. And I'll tell you what, my life is totally devoted to this. It's finding this is where my life is. February I had a heart attack. That was my 6th stent. And it's the health thing. And I'll cover this really briefly. Sure, I've always been fighting health. We all have. And you find out that when you sit back, if you're a grandparent and you have CNN and you have Fox on the TV, turn it off. Because all they are is opinions and beliefs. And what they do is they drive you to poor health, and they're not the truth. And since you can't do anything about any of that crap anyway, just focus on these grandchildren and make your life focused on them and learn little new ways. Have them teach you. One of my greatest teachers was Stephen Covey. And one of the things he told me, he says, you really want to learn something? Teach it. So have those kids teach you. You see, that's a big, big thing, is have those kids teach you. And, so it's kind of, that part, and there's tons of things. I'm trying to get this book done, but I realized that it's put on hold because I'm not done learning to create content. That's what but it's my focus is, the health thing. So I had a heart attack. Now, finally, it's like, I thought I was getting myself in good health. I cut my Snicker bars down from 7 down to 2. I started walking them about a couple miles a week. I started really hitting heavy. But then all of a sudden, one day we're packing, we're getting ready to go to Vegas, had a meeting down there, and I had that strange feeling again. I already had 5 stents in me from 15 years ago. I had this strange feeling, and it told the spirit, said, hey, you need to tell your wife. And I'm not going to screw up this trip. No, you need to tell her now. Well, finally, I pushed me to her and said, tell her now. She's an RN. So I told her, I really, hey, by the way, dear, we had to cancel a flight, go to the hospital, found out my main artery was 100% blocked. If I hadn't listened to it, I wouldn't be here. But it was getting my attention that, hey, here's what the voice said. Listen, buddy, you have 2 choices here. I go, yeah? What is it? You can quit eating crap, or you can quit eating crap. I go, what? Well, we don't serve crap up here, and so if you don't do it down there, you're coming up here. So I said, oh, okay. So I've cut out sugar. I've been running 5 miles a day. You know what? The last time I weighed this much, I think I was like 7 years old, and it was like, oh my gosh, I didn't think I was ever going to run again. I thought, last time I ever run, but now I'm out there and I'm running. But I think the last time I ran, I think I took some old lady, 98-year-old lady's purse, and I was running down the street. I got 2 blocks. She caught up with me and kicked my butt, but that was about it. And then the other thing is to be vulnerable. I have never been able to do a pull-up. Today, I still can't do a pull-up, but someday I'll get there. But it's that health thing. Driving is not for me. It's for the purpose. And when you discover that purpose, your health is so important. It's like putting your own mask on. I see myself on stages and stuff and being out there in public, but I need to be like Mick Jagger, man. That guy, Energizer Bunner. I remember Bunny. He was just on stage not too long ago, and it's like, oh my gosh, that guy can dance around 70 years old or whatever, So anyway, that's my last thing I would say. It's a health issue. It's really important. And you need to not do it for yourself. You got to do it for your grandkids.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And Roland, I really do appreciate you taking time out of your day and sitting down with us and talking about the importance of these connections and being intentional with these relationships and how grandfathers can be just very, very important in the lives of those grandkids, because that's certainly the mission of the Cool Grandpa podcast. So,
well, I don't know if anyone ever told you, but I think you're really a cool grandpa.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Wow, what a great conversation with Roland. It was fantastic to get to know him and hear how passionate he is about the role of grandfathers in the lives of grandchildren. It was great to learn even more about how important connections are from his perspective with those grandchildren. I've got a number of different links that Roland and I have talked about that are going to be in the show notes. So be sure to go to cool-grandpa.us, find this episode, and click on those links. So until next time, remember to stay cool. Thank you for listening to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and share it with a friend. That's the best way you can help us to expand our community, as well as get the news out about how valuable grandpas are in the lives of those kids. If you'd like to leave me a comment or shoot me a potential topic for this podcast, please go to www.cool-grandpa.us. Look for the comments tab, fill it out, hit submit. It's as easy as that. Until next time, remember to stay cool.